Frieren has been announced to get an English release at Anime Expo coming on November 22, in 1 week. Coming from Madhouse Studio, it's one of the best anime of the decade, taking the #1 spot on my anime list. Maybe some of you will start playing Weiss Schwarz with it, and we usually recommend to beginners to pick up the trial deck for a series to learn how to play the game, then move on to the booster cards to make a deck that's viable for tournament play. But it turns out the trial deck for Frieren actually has the best finisher of the set, to the point that it's the one the high-level players use for tournaments. Today I'm going to show you the decklist for Frieren. I will explain to you the concept of the deck, we'll see one decklist without any double rare, so for budget players, and then we'll see the optimal meta decklist. And after that I'll show you a game on the Weiss Schwarz simulator, so that by the end of the video you'll know everything you need to know on how the deck works, what cards you'll need to upgrade the trial deck, and if you want to build Frieren when it comes out in English. So what you have on screen right now is a list for trial deck. Let's just keep only the core. So first, let's look at the level 3 Frieren. When you play her from hand, you top check 3, you can take a card. So she can take her own climax, or she can get another copy of herself, potentially. And then when she attacks, you can discard 2 to deal 4 damage to the opponent, and you can give 2000 power to her character. So with a burn 4 and an attack at 3 soul, you can potentially deal 7 damage, so wall level to your opponent, assuming that you don't cancel. The second part is the email. Whenever you get sent to waiting room, you can clock one from your hand, search for a character, and then put the email in memory. So it's a cool and fix in the early game. But the reason you want it in memory is for the Frieren Brainstorm. So this is a classic trial deck Brainstorm. You brainstorm on 5 cards, but you draw cards, you don't get to search. But then at level 3, if you have the email in the memory, you can just sacrifice the Brainstorm to put the Frieren from your hand into the stage and give it X-Proof. So in theory, if you have 3 Brainstorms and you have 3 Frierens level 3 in your hand, you can just put all 3 of them for 0 stock. And this is very strong because even if you have a bad game, even if you had to use your stock in other ways, you always have a way to triple finisher. This makes the deck very consistent. You do have to make sure that you have 6 cards to discard if you want to triple Frieren, but this is why with the extra stock you can actually brainstorm first to make some end size. Also cool to mention cards from the trial deck, this hitter that you can play for end fix, and the producer or climax swap, with also a trap to send your opponent to the bottom deck, which is like cool utility. Now let's look at the budget list, so not double rares. So the main disadvantage of this burn 4 combo is that burning 4 is a lot. On a compressed game state it's not going to work. But thankfully, the whole theme of the Frieren set is that it works around events that represent the magic, the spells. And the most useful spell is going to be the magic to create a flower garden, which is basically a stock shuffle, and you also get to salvage 1. So if your opponent is very compressed, has like 10 clean stocks and 10 cards in deck with 4 climaxes, you can just go like play the stock shuffle, and it's a bit random whether you hit climaxes or not, but then you just play triple Frieren and you have like 6 instances to try to finish the game. And also, because the finisher theoretically costs 0 stock, you can actually play this 2-4 event, the basic attack magic, to add 3 more damage when you had a good game, to make it 7 instances, so very good chances to kill your opponent. In this budget version, we run the New Year Festival of Frieren, basically Seaguard combo, mill 2, and you salvage some of the levels, and you'll be trying to loop this combo for level 1 and level 2. In this version we run enough yellow so that you can play this Twin Drive email from the trial deck, while also playing this Frieren and email. So it is a double rare, but if you look at the Japanese market, it's not very expensive, it's not played in many builds, and it's basically just a way to have an early heal. It's not even like necessary, but you do want at least 1 heal in your deck, just to make sure that you don't die at 3-6 and you have to refresh your deck. For level 0s in budget deck, we have the Hitter. Pretty cool profile, can search 2 of your combo at level 0. The opponent is going to be this Heizen, with level 1 3k power and can move, so pretty hard to kill. We're going to only run the trial deck Brainstorm, that's going to help us to draw the climaxes and potentially the events. And to discard is going to be the Skull Frieren, it's how I call her, to discard an event or climax to salvage 1. Now let's look at the more competitive deck list, and this is really the build I want to play this year. I'm really looking forward to it. So instead of the Frieren Seaguard combo, we actually run the Fern combo. She has naturally 6k and 8k on attack, which is pretty good for level 1. And when you play her climax, you get to salvage either the Flight Magic or the Magic to find lost accessories. Flight Magic is going to be top check 4, take a character, and Magic to find lost accessories is going to cost 1 to draw 1 and discard 1, and salvage 1. Note that they are both backups, so you can technically play them during your opponent's turn, either if you're free on 4 cards and you can just like check all 4 of them and refresh, or if you have a climax to play or to discard just before your refresh. On top of that, the Frieren combo is on pants, so we actually get to run 8 pants, or gates, call it however you want. So whenever we trigger a climax, we get a climax back. You don't have to always get one back. You kinda have to evaluate when it's good or not, but it's just going to make the looping of the combo so much more consistent. On top of that, we run the Frieren Brainstorm, which is a salvage brainstorm, so with it will be easier to loop your combo, get exactly what you want, prepare the level 3 combo. And it has a neat ability, so that every time you play an event, you can top check 2 and reorder. So the main pattern is going to be playing your level 1 combo with Frieren, get back 2 flight magic, 1 magic to final accessories. Then you start your turn, you play flight magic, you top check up to 4, you can take whatever you want, stop if you want. And then after that you get to look at your top deck, and you're going to see what you can potentially draw. So if for instance there is a climax or Frieren on the top of your deck, you can just like play the magic to find the last accessories and draw it naturally like that. And then you get to salvage the Frieren combo, so it just makes it extremely easy to loop your combo. And even if you don't see any climax or things you want, you can just play another flight magic and try again. Overall, it just gives the deck a very nice flow. To make sure that we can get the stock shuffle event or the bound for event, we play the Serie. So there's a double rare version, you don't need to play the SP, don't worry. Which is going to be a Riki, which you can occasionally use to just level up from level 0 to 1 or from level 2 to 3. But the main thing you're going to use it for is to discard an event to salvage an event. And because you already have a way to get back your events with the combo, you'll know that you have things to discard, and you just need to make sure that you have at least one stock shuffle event or bound free event in your waiting room to salvage. We also run this shrink event, which is very good into stall matchups, like Shanna and its anti-burn or -2 souls. For matchups that spam the early plays, there's also this trap Frieren, which is insane. We run like 12 events in this list, so when she attacks, she can trap something and then give 10 to 20k to another character. So you get to reverse 2 level 3s with 1 card, really insane. We don't play enough yellow to play the other early heal, so we play this Frieren instead. We cannot play her in the budget deck because she does require the 6 events in waiting room, so we need a more event heavy deck to play her. We also need some red to be able to play the 1-1 event, so we play the Aizen Opener with Stark, which is kind of the same role, 3k5, 1 level. Later in the game you can just play it, and if you reveal a climax you can choose to draw it with magic for accessories. And then this card is just mainly for the Macross Delta matchup, that's also going to release soon. Here are a few cards that you can run in your list, some honorable mentions. I don't run it in my build, but you can totally do. This level 0 trap Frieren could replace the Stark if you want. She has more utility in the late game, like lets you get better brainstorms, or just one more way to look at your top deck and see if you want to play the magic to find the accessories or not. This one is basically the Overlord counter. You just have to play her, target the slot on Heinz, and they lose all of its markers. So you just completely negate their game plan. I think that once Frieren releases, it will be way harder to play Overlord in tournaments. So if you're going to an English tournament, definitely run one of these. And then the other effects, the top check 3 take a card. You don't need it that much in that deck, because we run 8 bands and we have ways to draw our climaxes, but it can still be useful. This Frieren can give some extra power to your farm, climb up to 11k, so if you find a matchup where it's useful, you can just include one. And I think one of the biggest topics for this deck is whether to run this Akatsuki-like profile, where you can discard 1 when you play it, look at 4 and take a level 1 or higher card, so it can get the events. But I feel that with the Flight Magic events, you already have enough milling power, so the situations where you want to play a card like that is only at level 0 to get another attacker, and she cannot do that, she cannot pick a level 0. And if your goal is to find your events with her, I just think the Serie is like more reliable for that. You could run it, but personally, I really fear whiffing the effect and discarding 1 for nothing. There is this Frieren if you want to run a second level 1 attacker. Personally, I just like to just loop the Frieren, play it as much as possible. But she's okay, she can get you an extra stock. It's not like that you need stock in that deck, but you can use it for compression. And then there's going to be this promo card, but just one more way on top of the shrink to get rid of problematic matchups. The one that try to hang on the board and try to have your stuff crash on it. She's just a very cool solution to these kind of matchups. Now that we're done, let's see a game with this deck, so that you can see how it's played. So this was actually the finals of a tournament in the French Discord that we did, the Soul Sort Online, and I was against Evans Baldrant. So the mulligan is pretty simple, you just discard the Frieren pants if you can, and you get just a Frieren combo in your level 0s. So there we do draw a Frieren, we are pretty happy. open with the Stark, as usual. You can actually attack with a Brainstorm. I would say it's pretty risky to attack with the second one there in this situation, because if you stay at level 0, it's going to be your only way to spend your stock and do something useful with it. So there, just attack with Stark and attack with the Brainstorm. Get some damage in. They're going to clock 1 and search for 1. Your level 1 combo, pretty basic. They play the Rico. This one is interesting because you can potentially get soul on it. So they respond with an attack for 2, and an attack for 1, and just take. We're ready to go to level 1. And the Stark, pretty likely that you'll survive. So there we clock, we can just put the email, we run 3 of it. We get the second Fern climax, so now we'll be able to lose the combo. You do need to make sure that you have the events in your waiting room. Fern cannot look at them in the deck. So you have to make sure that you fill it either with the events or with Brainstorm to make sure that you have enough targets. There we're just going to pick the email. It's way better if the email dies because your opponent tries to reverse it so that you get better value of it. But in some matches, we're going to just play traps and just make sure that he never gets into memory. So in this case, you can like consider to crash during your turn, or to just sack it, play a character over it, and just trigger it like that. You can also choose to just totally ignore email. It's just going to allow you to play the finisher for 0, but if you have the stock already, if you have your 6 stock, you don't really need it. So there we get 3 clean triggers, they take everything, which is pretty good news. They're going to have to consider whether they want to clock or not, to just keep these 6 cards stuck in clock and keep their compression. We're a bit sad that we didn't find another Fern to do the combo, but because the Stark survived, we're pretty happy. And when email dies, we're going to be able to clock like the early play or the Stark and try to look for another Fern. We already have the climax in hand, so we are pretty fine. So Event Burst Ren does have this producer that's very good, where you can exchange the win climaxes from your deck for 0 stock. Very good for stability. And the climax combo just has a lot of power. It's going to be at the end of the attack, top check 4. We get a cancel. We only had 2 climaxes in the waiting room, so we can expect like 1 to 2 cancel this turn. You won't always be this lucky, so there are times where you'll have to actively like brainstorm 1 or 2 times per turn to try to accelerate your refresh. Oh yeah, after that it goes to memory and it can come back in the next turn. And we get the double cancel. We're pretty happy. We're starting to be in advance. And they top check 4. And they get an extra card. Oh yeah, just a drop search. But you can also play when it goes to waiting room. Okay. So there, when email goes to waiting room, we activate the effects. Clock 1, look for a Fern. And then we can put the email into memory. Then draw. We kind of have to clock. We are high enough and we are in advance enough on damage, so it's okay to just clock. And now really the challenge is to try to figure out the order of when do you want to play your draw Brainstorm or your salvage Brainstorm. We can also just take for the security thing, just discard the climax that we drew, get back a Fern. So we already have 2 of them. And I guess that if we play the salvage Brainstorm and then use it, we'll have to sack the Skull Frieren to make a space for the last Fern. So maybe not worth it. Okay, draw the climax, so at least we know that we cannot trigger anymore. And so usually in these situations, you're kinda okay with having a big deck, because if they front attack you, you'll get to play your counter events to top check up to 4 and take a card. So you're never really free. And that's what people are going to have to learn when playing against this deck, is to learn when to side attack, just to make sure that they actually take the guaranteed damage. So there we front for 2 that they take, so they go to level 2. Our front for 2, they also take. And for 4, and at least this is cancelled. This is not totally a non-game. So he gets back his combo. And this is like the main thing of Event Burst Red. It plays a bodyguard. It kind of hopes that you triple crash into it, because all your characters have to frontal attack it as long as it's not reversed. And then it can play a level 2 combo that's And basically it's like Escanor from 7 Deadly Sins, where if she attacks for 3, she's not going to deal 3 damage, she's going to deal 1 times 3 damage, which is ultra hard to cancel and can be very deadly. So we do not want them to get direct attacks if we can. And this is like one strength of the Frieren deck. It has a good toolbox of tech cards that can play into a lot of matchups. So there we go, another climax. And because of front attack, we get to actually play the event. There I chose to play the flight event to make sure that I get back the 2-1. I was going to give a lot of power to one of my characters and make sure that I can actually reverse the bodyguard. Because if I don't get it now and I refresh and it's in the bottom of the deck later, then I'm not going to have any outs. I'm going to have to like maybe try to get the shrink events, but that kind of depends on getting the 1 serie, and I was not confident on that. Actually take this 4, so pretty huge, they really come back. But not get to level 3 yet. And you can see that the 6k on Fern, it's really good, it's really a lot compared to some level 1 combo that have only like 3 or 4k during the opponent's turn. Having 6k cross turn, there's a lot of matchups where you're going to triple Fern and one actually survives. So we Brainstorm, actually get to hit 1. We don't have the climax in hand. We don't have the 1-1 spell in hand to try to draw again. So I think this turn I just accepted to not play the combo. I did try one more Brainstorm, hit 2. Okay, there's one more try, and you can see like the deck can just force itself into really like trying to get the climaxes. It's really fun. So there we do the technique of playing Flight Magic, and then we get to top check 2, and we see that there is the Pants for Fern. So we have the option to just play the 1-1 event to draw it, and yeah, we're just going to do that. Make sure that we get the extra damage, the extra in size. Very good. I do want to say I should have checked 1 less with the top check 4 event, so that I have 5 cards in deck when I do that. So that if I see the Fern Pants, I can actually put it on top of my deck and still have 4 cards in deck to refresh my climax at the end of the turn. But that's really like the micro optimization. So there, because we have the 6 events, we can just play the early heal. Discard 1 to heal to stock. Pretty efficient. And then play the famous card that's going to give a lot of power to one of our characters. So a lot of stock was spent this turn. We had to double Brainstorm, play a 1-1 event, play a 2-1, play a 3-2 that kinda got back a stock. So like we spent 5 stocks, but it's all okay because the finisher doesn't take any stock. And there you see like the 2-1 just jumping this other character to 22k. You don't see that in any series. I was a bit bad because I should have like rearranged my character. If the Fern was now front attacking the 1-0, I could have reversed it. So little misplay on my part, but it's okay. We kind of have to accept it. They do get some cancel though, finally. So we can stabilize. And also, pretty unlucky to clock 1 climax from the refresh, trigger 1 after the refresh that we cannot use. But at least they don't get the free direct, so I'm not sure if I can actually try to get a kill right now. They're going to clock to level 3, play 1 more bodyguard, and I think their idea is just try again. Try to force me into crashing again. You can see they have like 2 cards in hand, so they're probably not ready for the full game plan. They didn't get their Brainstorm. I think it's a big thing that they played in this game. If they had the setup to try to kill me, there were good chances that this could have succeeded. So direct for 2, take it. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about colors, but you only need blue and red in this deck. You just want to make sure that you have the red for the events. The others are not necessary, so pretty easy in that aspect. And then the front, and we just get 1 cancel this turn. On dev, we're going to pay 1 each one to search for 1 more, probably compress a bit. And you can see they likely have 5 climaxes in deck for 15 cards. So kinda hard to kill, but let's see. We clock for 1. We do need to clock when we get at level 3, because we need enough insights for our Frieren. So we do Brainstorm, we hit 2, so more insights to potentially do the triple Frieren, but needs a discard 6. We do get the stock shuffle event, so this is exactly the situation what I was kinda telling you about. They have clean stock, they have a pretty compressed deck. It's just time to try to put some climaxes in stock and just get rid of some cancels. Because we have the email, we can just sack the Brainstorm to top 3. There we can pick the climax, which was actually the last one in the deck, so pretty lucky. But it's okay because in theory we're going to play Frieren 3 times. So it's 9 cards that you get to see. Normally you'll get to see your climax. And on top of that you get the Brainstorm draws. So with only 3 stocks, normally we could only play 1 copy, but you'll see that the goal is not going to be trying to find the Brainstorm and also the Frieren level 3. So we do see with the Frieren Brainstorm that there's going to be a Frieren level 3 on top of the deck. So when we play the first one, we'll get the second one. So we can just play the stock shuffle, get back a Brainstorm, actually use the stock shuffle to try to put back some climaxes. Just see the deck again. This is also good to see your triggers, knowing if you want to side or not. What is the order of your attacks. And then we take the Frieren, sack the Brainstorm, play another Frieren. And because they have X-Proof, like, there's no defensive counter that's going to counter this combo. It's pretty safe in that aspect. And then just play the climax and just try the big swings. They do have the bodyguard that you have to play around. So, but because we get like the 2k power, we're going to be able to reverse it. They cancel the burn 4. Now attack for 3. They cancel again. Going to try the direct to make sure that we have the side attack option for last. They cancel again on 4th. So, pretty scary. They cancel once again. So, we just want at least 1 climax to have hit their stock. We just don't know if like they hit high clean. This time they do take the 4. We side it for 2 because with the refresh damage, it's all we need to kill. And they have 1 chance to cancel, and they did not. So we win this game. And there I think you can see like the play pattern of this deck. With the finisher, you're just trying to just exhaust your opponent's climaxes. You're pretty immune to all of the defensive options with all the tech cards you have. And then you just need to like force a level. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this inspired you to try out the deck. And if you're planning on building Frieren, this is really the list I recommend for it. So in Japan it's kind of a tier 3 deck, a deck that you just see once or twice in a tournament. But I think in the English format, with the tech card that can just destroy Overlord, and with the popularity of the series, I think it might be even more represented. This is the deck I want to play for the BCF season. It's really fluid, and Frieren is just like such a great series. Good life lessons, good pacing, great action. Watch it if you haven't yet. And it will just be a blast to just be able to play it. If you like the video, leave a like, leave a comment, very important. Not only does it help the channel grow by sending signals to YouTube, I can make more people aware that this kind of content exists. I try to be concise, but to also give a lot of useful tips on how you are supposed to play each card, like the kind of video that I would want to see. And then it's also important because I like to see the big numbers, especially in Weiss Schwarz videos, because it's more of a niche community. So make sure you raise that engagement. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and see you on the next one. Bye bye!